Picture this. A man retires at 58. No pension, no corporate golden handshake. He doesn't know a single stock ticker by heart. But he owns 400 acres of productive farmland in Iowa, water rights on a creek in Colorado, and a fractional position in a toll road fund that clears $3,100 a month into his account automatically, whether the market is up, down, or sideways. He didn't get lucky. He didn't find some obscure loophole. He followed a blueprint that the wealthiest families in the world have used for centuries, quietly, without fanfare, while everyone else was glued to CNBC. And here's the part that should stop you cold. That blueprint is not complicated. You just haven't been shown it. I'm going to show it to you today. All of it. The three assets, land, water, and infrastructure, that have never permanently lost their value in recorded history. The exact reason they work while everything else burns. And the specific vehicles you can use right now at almost any account size to start building the same kind of unbreakable wealth this man built. By the end of this video, you will see your financial life through a completely different lens. Stay with me. Most people spend their financial lives in a posture of waiting. Waiting for the Fed to move, waiting for the next earnings report, waiting for someone smarter, richer, better connected than them to make a decision, and then trying to react fast enough to benefit from it. That's not investing. That's following. And followers, by definition, arrive second. Here at WealthForge, we operate on a different premise. We believe that the goal of financial intelligence isn't to follow the market faster, it's to stop being subject to it at all. We don't follow the market, we design the moat. In a world of followers, we are the architects of our own freedom. That's not a slogan, it's a structural philosophy, and today's video is going to make it concrete. Because an architect doesn't ask what's going to outperform this quarter. An architect asks something far more powerful. What can I own that the world cannot function without? That question, sit with it for a second, is the entire intellectual foundation of what we're about to walk through. The answer is three things, three categories of asset that have passed every stress test in modern economic history. Three hard moats. Let's build. Let's be real about where we are right now. It's 2026. The AI investment cycle is running hot. Every week brings another headline, another model, another valuation milestone, another fund raising billions for compute infrastructure. The market feels electric. The mood is euphoric. And I get it. Early movers on AI infrastructure plays have made extraordinary returns. I'm not here to talk you out of growth investing, but I need to ask you an uncomfortable question. What happens when the music stops? Because here's what's hidden in every AI-driven equity rally. The entire value proposition is built on expectation, on projected future earnings, on assumed continued enterprise adoption, on the belief that the capital flows will keep flowing, the government support will hold, and the competitive advantages won't be disrupted by the next model drop, the next regulatory shift, the next geopolitical fracture. Remove any single one of those assumptions and watch what happens to those multiples. Now, contrast that with this fact. Productive farmland in the American Midwest has appreciated in real terms after inflation adjustment for over 70 consecutive years. Not every year was explosive. Some years it was quiet, but the floor never permanently gave way because the thing underneath that investment, the soil, the biological capacity to grow food, that is not subject to sentiment. It doesn't re-rate on a bad earnings call. It doesn't collapse because a new model came out. It just keeps being necessary. Here's the core truth of this entire video. Digital assets are built on attention. Hard assets are built on necessity. Attention is the most volatile commodity on earth. Necessity is the most stable. And right now, in the most attention-driven market in modern history, the smartest institutional money in the world is quietly rotating into necessity. So here's what we've established. The current market is fragile in ways most people aren't being shown, and the alternative, Hard Moats built on necessity, has a 70-year track record of compounding through every crisis. That's the first piece. Now let's go deeper into each one. Pillar 1, land. And I want to reframe this immediately because when most people hear real estate, their mind goes to houses, to mortgages, to whether the Fed is going to cut rates and whether inventory is improving in their city. That's residential real estate. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about productive land, farmland, timberland, strategic land in secondary growth corridors, land that doesn't just sit there, land that generates. Here's something remarkable that began around 2023 and is only deepened. Productive farmland has structurally decoupled from the residential market. When home prices in major metros corrected 15 to 20% off their 2022 peaks, prime agricultural land in the Midwest barely moved. In many submarkets, it kept climbing. Why? Because farmland isn't priced on narrative. It's priced on corn yield per acre, on soybean futures, on water table depth, on biological output that has been running reliably for 10,000 years. You cannot disrupt a soybean with a press release. The practical entry points today, because WealthForge is about blueprints, not theories. Fractional farmland access through REITs and dedicated platforms brings this asset class into reach at almost any capital level. For investors with larger allocations, direct land acquisition in water-rich agricultural regions, the Great Plains, Pacific Northwest corridors, and select South American markets is where multi-generational positions get built. Here's the framing I want you to carry through the rest of this video. Every other hard asset we're going to discuss derives part of its value from land. Water flows across it. Infrastructure is anchored to it. The moat begins at the ground. Pillar 1. Land. Specifically productive land, the kind priced on output, not sentiment, that has compounded in real terms for 7 decades. Entry points exist at every level. Now, Pillar 2, and this is the one that I think most sophisticated investors are dramatically underestimating right now. Pillar 2, water. Let me give you a number that should reframe how you think about this. 2 billion. That's the number of people the UN currently classifies as living under water scarcity conditions. 2 billion. And that number trends in one direction. Now let me give you another number. 0. That's how many viable large-scale substitutes exist for fresh water. You can substitute oil with solar. You can substitute copper with fiber. You can substitute coal with nuclear. You cannot substitute water with anything. And yet, water remains the most systematically underpriced essential resource on the planet. The gap between what water is worth and what it costs is one of the defining investment mispricings of our era, and that gap is closing.
Let me walk you through exactly where the opportunity lives. Water rights. Particularly in the Western United States, water operates on what's called the prior appropriation doctrine. First in time, first in right. Senior water rights holders get paid first before municipalities, before agricultural operations, before anyone who came after them. And these rights can be legally separated from land, bought, sold, and leased as a standalone asset. In states like Colorado, Arizona, and Nevada, senior water rights transactions have quietly become some of the most significant property deals happening right now. Almost no financial media covers it. Desalination infrastructure. The cost of desalination technology has fallen by approximately 75% over the last 20 years. Nations and municipalities that once couldn't afford it are now building. The private utilities operating these facilities hold a form of monopoly that is essentially unassailable. They provide an essential service with no viable substitute under multi-decade government contracts to populations that literally cannot survive without their product. Think about that business model for a moment. No substitute, captive customer, government contract, decade-long horizon. That is not a business. That is a toll booth on human survival. And you can invest in it. Entry points. Water utility ETFs, the Invesco Water Resources ETF and First Trust Water ETF are the most accessible vehicles. Direct water rights acquisition in water-stressed Western states for higher net worth allocators. And private infrastructure debt in desalination projects for sophisticated investors seeking yield with structural downside protection. Pillar 2. Water, the most underpriced essential on the planet, with entry points ranging from ETFs to direct rights acquisition. The scarcity story is already playing out in real time. The only question is whether you're positioned before or after the repricing. Now, the third pillar, and this is where the architect mindset reaches its full expression. Pillar 3. Critical infrastructure. Power grids,
toll roads, rail networks, ports, pipeline systems, and the newest, most underappreciated member of this category, the physical backbone of the digital economy, 6G fiber trunk lines and hyperscale data transmission networks. Here's what makes infrastructure fundamentally different from every other asset class we've discussed, and different from virtually everything else in your portfolio. The barriers to entry are not just high, they're effectively permanent. Consider what it would take to build a new interstate toll road in the United States today. You'd need to navigate eminent domain proceedings that take years, environmental review processes that stretch longer, regulatory approvals at the federal, state, and local level simultaneously, and then 5 to 15 years of construction, billions of dollars spent before you collect your first toll. No startup can do that. No venture fund will fund that. No competitor can replicate it in any meaningful time frame. That's not a moat. That's a fortress ringed by a moat surrounded by another moat. The operators of existing toll infrastructure, private concession holders across North America, Europe, and Australia, collected their tolls through the 2008 financial crisis. They collected through COVID shutdowns, in many cases still receiving contractual availability payments from government agreements even when traffic dropped to zero. They will collect through the next recession and the one after that. The same permanence applies to power transmission infrastructure, not the energy commodity that fluctuates, the pipes, the actual transmission lines, transformer stations, and distribution nodes. In a world aggressively electrifying everything, vehicles, heating systems, industrial processes, the value of physical delivery infrastructure moves in one direction. And then there's the 21st century railroad play that almost nobody is talking about. Fiber trunk infrastructure. The entire digital economy, the AI models, the cloud computing, the streaming platforms, the financial systems, runs on physical glass and copper buried in the ground. The companies and funds that own that physical layer are positioned exactly like the 19th century railroad barons who realized they didn't need to care which train won. They owned the track. In 2026, the owners of fiber trunk lines don't need to pick the winning AI company. Every single inference, every training run, every API call made by every AI system on the planet travels across their infrastructure. They collect from them all. Government contracts in this space frequently include availability payments, contractual obligations where governments pay whether or not the asset is fully utilized. This provision places a legal floor under investor returns that exists in almost no other asset category in the world. Practical entry, infrastructure-focused ETFs like IFRA and PAVE for accessible exposure, Macquarie Infrastructure and similar institutional-grade funds for larger allocations, private infrastructure equity and co-investment structures for sophisticated capital. 3 pillars built. Now the critical question: how do you actually put this into your portfolio starting today? All right, let's build the thing. You have the 3 pillars: land, water, infrastructure, the hard moats. But knowing about them isn't the blueprint. The application is the blueprint. And that's exactly what WealthForge is here to give you. Here's the framework: 4 steps specific and actionable for this exact environment in 2026. Step 1. Audit your fragility. Open your brokerage account right now, mentally if not literally, and ask one question: what percentage of my net worth exists because of sentiment? Not fundamentals, not physical necessity, pure sentiment, someone's belief that a number will go higher. If that number is above 60 or 70%, you don't have a portfolio, you have a bet, and it's a bet placed entirely on other people's continued optimism. That's the honest starting point. Most people don't do this because the answer is uncomfortable. Do it anyway. Step 2. Find your entry point in each moat fit your size. You do not need to be wealthy to begin building real asset exposure. You do not need to buy a farm. You do not need to purchase water rights. Institutional vehicles, farmland REITs, water ETFs, infrastructure funds have made these asset classes accessible at almost any account size. The entry point for your hard moats portfolio can begin with the same monthly contribution you'd make to any index fund. The question isn't access. The question is intention. Step 3. Make the shift from quarters to decades. This is the deepest mindset shift, and it's where the architect separates from the follower permanently. The followers question, what's going to outperform in the next 90 days? The architects question, what is going to be more essential to human civilization in 30 years than it is today? Food, water, energy, connectivity. The answers haven't changed in 10,000 years of human history, and the assets that control the delivery of those essentials are available to you right now, often at a discount, because the financial media is currently too busy talking about AI stocks to notice.
Step 4. Commission the compounding machine, then leave it alone. Hard assets compound differently than equities. They don't spike. They rarely make headlines. They accumulate steadily, quietly, without drama. A productive farmland position generating 7% annually across rent and appreciation compounded over 25 years is a life-changing number. An infrastructure fund paying 5 to 6% yield indexed to inflation held for 2 decades is a retirement without counterparty risk. But, and this is critical, it only works if you give it time. The wealth-building mindset doesn't check the ticker every morning. It commissions the machine, validates the thesis periodically, and lets the compounding run. That is the architect's edge. Not speed, not cleverness, structure. I want to close with something that sits with me every time I think about this. The fortunes that survived the Great Depression, survived 2 world wars, the dot-com collapse, the 2008 financial crisis, a global pandemic, they didn't survive because the people who built them were smarter traders. They weren't faster at clicking buy and sell. They survived because those people owned things the world could not function without. They owned the land that grew the food that fed cities. They owned the water that those cities couldn't live without. They owned the roads, the rail lines, the power infrastructure that kept civilization itself operational. They were not followers of the system. They were load-bearing parts of the system. That is what WealthForge exists to build with you. Not tips, not the next hot trade, not tactics for chasing the current cycle's winner. A structural position, a design that holds its shape regardless of what the market does next month, next year, or in the next decade. We don't follow the market. We design the moat. And here's what I know about you, because you watched this far. You're already thinking differently than you were 25 minutes ago. That shift, that's not nothing. That's the beginning of the architect's mindset. Now, act on it. Drop a comment right now, just one word. Which moat calls to you first? Land, water, or infrastructure? I read every single comment personally, and your answers directly shape what we build together here on WealthForge. And subscribe. If this opens something for you, share it. One person in your life needs this framework. You know who it is. And the next video, already waiting for you on this channel, takes everything we built today and goes to the next level. The actual allocation model, the due diligence checklist I use personally when evaluating hard asset positions, and the 3 mistakes most new investors make when entering these markets for the first time. It's ready. Click it now. Until then, stop watching the ticker, start designing the moat. I'm Dr. Ben. This is WealthForge, and I will see you in the next build.